Jai Shankar. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri Bhavani Shankaraya Namaha. Om Shri Matreya Namaha. We will begin with a Sabha Prarambha Prarthana. Dakshinasya Samarambha Shankaracharya Madhyama Asmadacharya Paryanta Smarya Guru Parampara Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaralokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badharayanam Sutrabhashakrito Vande Bhagavanto Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadyaptadehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Parignanashrama Shri Guru Shankara Parignanashrama Shankara Sadguru Keshava Vamana Krishna Panduranga Ananda Parignana Guru Sadyojata Shankara Sadguru Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karvavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I will ask Krishnanand ma'am to introduce the session and talk to us about the ongoing Atmabal series during the Sayujam event. Over to you, Krishnanand ma'am.
Thank you, Vinaya. Pranams to Param Pujya Swamiji, Jai Shankar, and welcome to everyone. The Sayujam period marks a coming together of two great events, the 75th Janma Divas of our Param Guru, Param Pujya Parignanashram Swamiji III, and the 25th Pattabhishek day of Pujya Sadhyoja Shankarashram Swamiji in 2022. So this period of 15 months has been marked as a celebration for all of us, which has various programs both on the personal sadhana and the samuhik sadhana front, as well as a lot of programs online because of the restrictions presently imposed under the Atma Bal series. Today we present you with the changing face of the Indian diet. Bhanaps are very passionate eaters, as all of us know, and today we have two experts talking to us from Bangalore, and they will be taking us through what we should eat and what we could avoid. Our moderator today is Vinaya Nadkarni, a Yuva from Mumbai, who is a licensed registered dietitian and a nutritionist with a postgraduate degree in diabetes and cardiac care. She is a member of the Indian Dietetic Association, a freelancer, and a lecturing facility at the Exercise Science Academy. She has also worked with the Asian Heart Institute very closely with the cardiac rehabilitation department and is passionate about fitness and believes that physical activity is a very essential part of a healthy lifestyle. I request Vinaya to introduce our panelists and take the program forward. Thank you, Vinaya.
Jai Shankar. Thank you so much for the introduction, Krishnanand ma'am. So, with the vast amount of information that is available out there because of global platforms like Google, so one may face ourselves with a situation that we might have more questions than answers while we try to look for what we must do, maybe quick fixes to certain needs that we have, whether it is any health condition or weight management or during COVID care, post COVID care. So, to answer these very vital aspects, we have our two experienced panelists with us today. I'd like to introduce them to you. First, we have Mrs. Uma Trasipachi. She's a practicing dietitian at the Manipal Hospitals, Malleshwaram, with over 23 years of experience in diet counseling. She completed her BSc Home Science at Srimati VHD Central Institute of Home Science, Bangalore, and did her master's in nutrition and dietetics from SVT College of Home Science in SNDT University, Mumbai. She consults for weight management, health checkups, nutritional deficiency cases, doctor referrals covering diabetes, renal, thyroid cases, nutrition for maternal health, and also patients of the fracture and orthopedic clinic at the hospital. Umapachi has been instrumental in setting up the dietary department in the hospital, and her work with patients is greatly facilitated with her ease with several languages. She had started with a Wiffy Jiffy canteen for college students back in 1980, using home produce to make college friendly snacks. Umapachi begins her day with pranayam and ninad. Interests: music, yoga, philosophy, herbal remedies, alternative methods of healing, to name a few. She has conducted summer camps for children in Canara Union and is a Bangalore Pratna Varg coordinator as well as the vice president of the Bangalore Sabha, Shri Chitrapur Mutt. That's a lot of extensive work to your credit, Umapachi. Our second speaker today is Mrs. Varsha Kopikar Pachi. She is a registered dietitian and a certified clinical researcher and diabetes educator with over 27 years of experience. She has a vast experience in the field of endocrinology, diabetes, cardiology, maternal health, and lifestyle. She believes in counseling patients holistically, focusing not only on diet and meal plans, but also lifestyle modification, including physical fitness, stress management, and behavioral changes. She has hands on experience of over 10 years in the field of clinical research across multi year, multi drug, long term studies through phase 2 and 3 trials. Her latest work as an author is published in Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics Journal. Varsha Pachi completed both her BSc in Foods, Nutrition and Dietetics and postgrad diploma in Dietetics and Applied Nutrition at Nirmala Niketan College of Home Science, Bombay University. She is currently working as a senior dietitian and one of the quality heads at PureFit. Varsha Pachi is a keen fitness enthusiast who practices yoga, meditation, and brisk walking to keep herself fit and loves experimenting on healthy recipes. She spends her free time reading, traveling, and exploring different places. A lot of feathers in your cap, Varsha Pachi. Really proud to have both of you speak to us today. I will now invite Umapachi to take over and go ahead with her presentation, The Changing Face of Indian Diet.
Om Shri Rupyo Namaha, Shri Bhavani Shankaraya Namaha, Shri Matre Namaha. Jai Shankar. My humble pranams to Parama Puji Swamiji. Thank you, Vinaya, for the nice introduction. And thank you, Sayujyam team, for giving this opportunity to address on health and nutrition as part of the Atmabal series. I feel truly blessed. I will be presenting the changing face of the Indian diet. Food has always been an integral part of our culture, and each region of the country has its unique cuisine, deeply rooted in traditions, lifestyles, religions, climate, and agricultural conditions. Indian food is vast, it is diverse, and it is wholesome also because it uses a lot of grains, beans, legumes, vegetables, and fruits. And there is nothing lacking as such in the Indian diet. But these days, many a time we face this question at home also when we cook a traditional diet. Ki amma, ajkal special hai. So that is where the changing face of the Indian diet begins. We are all familiar with the definition of health. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Parama Puji Swamiji has blessed us with this lovely capsule where we have been told to begin the day with light exercises, pranayam and ninad, and this is the need of the hour today. Now coming back to the topic, the increasing westernization, urbanization, and mechanization occurring in most countries around the world is associated with changes in the diet towards one of high fat, high energy dense foods and a sedentary lifestyle, and India is also a part of it. About 2 to 3 decades ago, the mode of transport would have been just cycling or walking. Everybody walked to school, to offices, to the market. But suddenly the roads were flooded with the two-wheelers and the four-wheelers. And the restaurant chains that hit every metropolitan city and the cities around, other cities around, changed the whole face of the diet and exercise in India. A study in 2008 estimated that an individual who ate out just once a month started eating once in 8 days, and then it became once in 3 days. And this change of exercise, lacking of exercise, and the diet which was continuously being focused on outside food increased obesity. So India is the third most obese country in the world, and it is the central obesity in Indians, that causes high triglycerides, high LDL, that is the bad cholesterol, and decreases the good cholesterol, HDL, because of lack of exercise and faulty dietary habits. Now, besides the various diets that we hear of, there was also a typical executive diet that came in. This was because of the change in professions and the change in the timings of the youngsters who work for long hours. Their diets become insufficient in complex carbohydrate, insufficient in fruits and vegetables, high fat diet, high sugar intake, fast food, sometimes alcohol, heavy night meals, and insufficient intake of water. They travel a lot, and we find that now there are more options available because of the different foods available outside and also the affordability. So this lifestyle change has caused an increase in the non-communicable diseases: heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, and respiratory diseases. If we just look at the traditional cuisine and the modern cuisine, we find that the traditional cuisine has a balance of all the basic food groups most of the time. In the modern cuisine, if we just have a look at the snacks, we find that it is either rich in salt, or it is rich in oil, or it has a lot of saturated fat. So the concept now, because of the lifestyle diseases, the concept of portion control has come in. Now, what happened in the pandemic and lockdown? There were further shifts in food habits. One thing that I would like to tell you all is we were very happy that a lot of healthy recipes called grandma's recipes started floating on the WhatsApp group. But along with that, there also was a slight change in the food habits. Even most of the times, if you are eating a healthy meal, the COVID binge eating has taken a front. And the ads which tell you, quick close your eyes and think of your king size burger. At the snap of your fingers, you have your meal at the door. These are all refined carbs. Then sometimes when we open our WhatsApp, you find that in the groups, there is a yummylicious recipe, which is called maybe choco lava cake. And all that it says is no baking and no need to get flour or milk. just use biscuits and cookies. Now, at such a time, I think we have to be a little mindful in our eating. So, what we could do is just look at the nutrition facts at the back of the particular product that you buy. Here it is cookies. Now, the serving size says 2 cookies and the calories is around 140. But suppose the recipe says you have to use all the 10 biscuits and add some cream to it or butter to it, then definitely the amount of fat and sugar that you're adding becomes so much more than when you would have made an original recipe of a chocolate lava cake. You tend to eat more fat, sugar, and calories. And what happens now? In lockdown, there is no time to exercise because we are not able to go out much. So the calorie intake is more and the calories burned is less. And we have found that childhood obesity, some of these kind of recipes are increasing the childhood obesity. Now let's come to the food pyramid. The food pyramid by the National Institute of Nutrition tells us about the cereals and millets, fruits and vegetables, pulses and dairy, fats and sugar. It just tells us what we should eat a little more, a good helping, moderate, and then fats and sugars to be the least. Eat in real moderation. But using these refined foods, we tend to eat fat and sugar more than the other essential nutrients. So now whole grains versus refined flour. We just saw that cereals and millets are a good source of carbohydrate, which is part of the pyramid, food pyramid. So the refined carbs, why do we need to swap them? Because they get digested easily and converted to fat, and it has no fiber. Whereas the whole grains contain dietary fiber, iron, and many B vitamins. Whole grains are the whole grain kernel with bran, germ, and endosperm intact. Along with the cereals like rice and wheat, now we have the common millets. And most of the time we must be using ragi and bajra or jowar. They are healthier also because they contain more fiber than the white rice, and it also contains iron. So what is the role of the cereals and millets? They are the major source of carbohydrates in our food. Carbohydrates play the role of providing energy, and most importantly, they are the main source of energy for the brain. Carbohydrates are protein-sparing foods and they enhance the learning process and memory. So we should remember here that most of the time children don't eat a healthy breakfast and go, and then they have headaches, or young girls who want to diet think that they should go on a low carbohydrate diet. But when so much of time is being spent in front of the screen, we actually need to eat a good amount of carbohydrate so that it keeps us live and alert for the full day. Another thing is, because protein is required for the other essential physiological processes, when we eat carbohydrate, protein is not used as the main source of energy, and we are sparing the protein. Proteins in our diet. So much is spoken that we need to take enough protein, and our diets don't meet the protein requirements. But this is not true, because there is an easy way out. Complete proteins are the foods that have all the 9 essential amino acids. Example, the white of an egg or cow's milk. And incomplete proteins lack 1 or more of the essential amino acids. But this is easily met in an Indian diet when we have the combination of cereals and pulses, like rice and dal or idli and sambar or the khichdis. They provide the right balance. Now, because of vegetarianism and vegan, there are the newer products or protein plants, which have come into the picture. This is the plant protein: quinoa, buckwheat, hemp, chia seed, spirulina, tempeh, soy, and amaranth. Amaranth is Rajgira, which most of us have been using earlier, and quinoa is a complete plant protein. All these can be used effectively by making bread or by adding it to your dosa batter to give you the right protein. Now, when it comes to sprouts, we are all familiar with the eating of sprouts. And what happens when we sprout grams? It increases the level of minerals and vitamins, including vitamin C. It also inhibits the release of ghrelin, a hunger hormone that indicates our brain to eat more. So protein has the highest satiety value, like ami mhantati pot bharlap trupt zali. So that satiety value is more in proteins. So for people who are looking for weight reduction, eating proteins is a game changer. So whereas carbohydrate and proteins were the two macronutrients which we just saw now, fats and oils are the third macronutrients. And there are 4 types of fat: the monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated, and trans fats. And all the monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated fats are balanced in the recommended oils which we use every day. It could be mustard oil, sunflower oil, gingerly oil, coconut oil, groundnut oil, rice bran oil, or olive oil for salads. Now, while all these oils, if used in moderation, are good, what bothers us is the trans fats. And fats give us the highest energy. So 1 gram of fat gives about 9 calories. That is why when we say a low-fat diet, we are referring to not that you should just cut fat, but be a little moderate in consuming fat. Men may come and men may go, but I go on forever. The tempting hot chips, which we all enjoy, what happens to our body when we eat a bag of potato chips? They are again processed foods, chemically altered. So you just can't stop at 1 pack, and the result is overeating. All processed foods are high in salt, and fats don't have that high satiety value as proteins. They have a rather low satiety value. So because you just don't get the message from the to the brain that you should stop with 1 bag of chips, you go on eating without realizing, and that 100 grams of chips gives you almost 500 calories. In a child's diet, we might say 1,200 calories per day or 1,500 calories per day. And when he eats so much chips, there is loss of appetite for the next meal. Also gain in weight. So now, what is this trans fat? This is the vegetable oil which has been hydrogenated, and the change that occurs is the MUFA and PUFA are changed to saturated fat. This trans fat is found in biscuits, baked products, and fried foods. It increases the bad cholesterol and also lowers the good cholesterol. So it is like saying foods that heal and foods that harm. We have to continuously think what we are eating, especially during this lockdown, because exercise is almost nil. When we are always busy working throughout the day, we forget to drink water. And since our body is 70% water, we have to make an attempt to drink water continuously during the day. In our diet, we will find that we can also use things like amgal sar, ani tak, magiri, tender coconut water. They are all adding to the healthy liquid. But many a time we tend to also quench our thirst with colas and caffeine. Colas contain phosphoric acid, leading to corrosion of bones and teeth. It has high sugar content, about 6 to 8 teaspoons in a glass of cola. Suppose we were to make a glass of lime juice, the maximum sugar we may add would be 3 teaspoons. So when we have fruit juices made at home, it is under our control and there is no need to eat excess of sugar. What about caffeine? We just love our coffees and don't realize the number of times we indulge in drinking coffee. This causes hyperactivity and affects the circadian rhythm, the sleep and awake patterns. So with all the fatty foods that we eat, we tend to gain weight. Then it is the battle of the bulge. So how about some healthy snacking? To do away with the chips or to keep it in moderation, we can use other healthy snack foods. We can eat seasonal vegetables and fruits, seeds and nuts, which provide both soluble and insoluble fiber in addition to vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. Now, the latest, we use avocado very nutritiously, nourishingly, we can say, by making it a dip. We're using it with carrots, or you have the hummus, which is made with the chana, which is also a high protein dip. Earlier, amkaghara, we used to remove the magya bee and, roast it and eat it. Now we have all of it, the melon seeds, pumpkin seeds readily available. We could use the groundnuts, we could use the various fruits to provide the right balance of vitamins and minerals. And what about our prasad that we get from the mutt? It is a totally balanced protein. Some tips to healthy Konkani cuisine. All of us may have our own good tips. So I've just made a quick sort of presentation. Suppose we were to make rava dodak. We could add cucumber or carrot to increase fiber. At Panpolam, Sakranke Preetasta, and we use coconut chutney with it. So by adding garlic to the chutney, you can make it heart friendly. आम्ही वाळी आंबट आणि शीत आणि बटाटा सॉंग करताली एक फान आर्टिकल जात म्हळ्यार सपोज वी डोंट हॅव द टाइम वी मे मेक जस्ट राइस दाल एंड बटाटा सॉंग सो यूजिंग रेड राइस फॉर योर मील or using red rice while making dosas is also a healthy option to increase the fiber. And along with the batata song, dal into, we can add green leafy vegetables for fiber and iron. Magiri idlis with chutney. And when you add sambar for more protein, magir batat pohu, you add peas to enhance protein. And rotate your rice, wheat and millets in your diet to make it more wholesome. The key pointers: eat a balanced diet, exercise daily for 30 to 45 minutes, stick to a sleep schedule. Thank you so much for your patient hearing. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Umapachi, for that wonderful presentation. Very crisp and valid points. In fact, I think it is something that we observe that in an attempt to make a low carb meal, we do tend to have this quick fix by ordering food or trying to introduce certain foods in the process of keeping carbohydrates low. But those other foods may land up having a higher content of sodium, fat, sugar, preservatives, and trans fat, as you mentioned. And the valid points that how, as part of a Konkani diet, how can we balance the carbohydrate with other vegetables and protein? I think that's a very important aspect to look into. And looking at quick recipes that can be made healthily at home instead of quick fixes, I think is a need of the hour to understand. Our next speaker is Varsha Pachi, and on a very important topic, that is the role of diet in building immunity. The times like this have caused us to stand up and take note and address our basic health and nutrition status, our immune status. So to address these points, I will ask Varsha Pachi to take over and present to us her topic.
Thank you, Vinaya, for that introduction. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Shri Bhavani Shankaraya Namaha. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Jai Shankar. Sadar Pranam to Param Pujya Swamiji. I express my gratitude to the entire Sayujam team for inviting me here to share my thoughts about immunity and the role of diet and lifestyle modification in building immunity. Immunity seems to be the buzzword these days, and we will see how we can build immunity. Now, when we talk about immunity, we have to understand what is immunity, and it is the ability to fight infection and disease by our body. It is a condition to be able to resist a particular disease, especially through preventing development of pathogenic microorganisms or by counteracting the effects of its products. By now, it's a very familiar fact that humans have more bacterial cells, a lot more than the human cells, right? Bacteria live on the skin, in the nose, ears, and most of all in the gut. It was previously assumed that the prenatal environment was free from bacteria, but thanks to the increasing sophisticated methods, we now know that bacteria is even present in the placenta, and we are born with a very naive immune system. Initially, the infant gets the immunity from the antibodies from the mother, and slowly the immune system has to be educated to go beyond the antibodies coming from the mother. And this education is extremely essential for building better immunity for lifetime. So that is one of the reasons why we say that when we talk about a healthy gut, it is to do with healthy digestion and a healthy immune system. Now, immune system is very, very responsible for fighting foreign invaders in the body, like the pathogenic bacteria and the viruses, and also destroy cells within the body when they become cancerous. Thus, good, clean nutrition to your body can enhance your immunity levels. Poor nutrition often results in increased infections, slow healing from injury and infections, and increases the susceptibility to symptoms and complications from the immune system dysfunction. A lot of studies have shown that immune function often decreases with age, and recent research suggests that this decrease is also related to the nutrition and may be slowed or even stopped by maintaining healthy nutrition. Now, people often ask, how do you boost your immune system? Is it by taking that 1 teaspoon of Chyawanprash or having a little amla juice or Karela juice? Well, the answer is to adopt a holistic approach. When we talk about good immunity is to do with the 5 pillars of lifestyle modification, which is nutrition and hydration, you have exercise, you have stress and sleep and emotional well-being. So for now, let us slowly take each of these in a quick manner. When we talk about immunity boosters and immunity boosters in the form of vitamins, well, we all know that vitamin C is the most recognized these days, right? So we have to understand that vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin, which means that it has to be continuously replenished. And this particular vitamin is a crucial participant in the army of immunity. It definitely helps to prevent the common cold. And the good sources of vitamin C could be citrus fruits like amla, orange, lemon, kiwi, pineapple, strawberries, guava. You have drumstick leaves, which are called as moringa, and it's in vogue these days. Papaya, potatoes, these are all good sources of vitamin C. The easiest to get vitamin C on a daily basis is to just squeeze a little lime on the dari that we make, dari toy, or any kind of a uppkari that we make, and we ensure that we get our quota of vitamin C. We must also understand the role of vitamin C beyond immunity. It also helps in absorption of iron, which is very, very important. Now, coming to vitamin E and vitamin D. Well, these two vitamins are the fat soluble vitamins, which means that we don't need to take it on a regular basis. Our body can store that for some time. So, vitamin E is a lipid soluble antioxidant in the human body, and it is very, very critical for optimal functioning of all the cells, including those of the immune system. So we have examples in the form of all vegetable oils. You have olives, you have wheat germ, sunflower seeds, you have peanuts, almonds, spinach is a good source of vitamin D. Well, coming to the very good source of vitamin E. Now, coming to the vitamin D, we all know that vitamin D is popularly also called as the sunshine vitamin. So, perhaps it is the most vital in regulating the absorption of calcium and phosphorus and facilitating the normal immune system function by working together with the T cells inside the body. You have a good amount of sources, and a lot is done these days in terms of fortification. So you have fortified dairy products, you have fortified milk, you have fortified yogurt, then there is fortified breakfast cereals. Apart from that, mushroom, salmon is good source of vitamin D. Coming to the immunity boosters in the form of minerals. Zinc is very, very vital to our immune system function, including maintaining the integrity of our skin and for cell mediating immunity, such as neutrophil and killer cells. So, a lot of studies have shown that people who are deficient in zinc are more susceptible to infection. Well, for vegetarians, you have sources like chickpeas, legumes, basically beans. You have flax seeds, hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, nuts like cashews, unprocessed meat. For people who consume non-veg, they have crabs and shellfish. Iron, I think a lot has been already spoken about iron, and it is a very essential nutrient for humans with critical functions in many, many cellular processes. And it is very essential for microbial growth, which helps nutrient absorption in the intestine. So, for iron sources for vegetarians, it's very, very important because 70% of the Indian population is vegetarian and we often are anemic. Apart from consuming rich sources of iron, I would like to throw a light that, there is a lot of hookworm infestation, and that is also one of the reasons why you may have iron deficiency. So if you have not dewormed for a long time, please ask your physician and deworm yourself. So then your iron absorption also increases. Again, you have good vegetarian sources in the form of green leafy vegetables, where you have spinach or Malabar spinach, that is our vali. You have the drumstick leaves, that is moringa, all the panna that we eat, tamalis that we make. You have legumes in the form of beans, soy products, chickpeas, lentils, pumpkin seeds. For people who are non-vegetarian, a good amount of shellfish, organ meats, and liver are good sources of iron. When we talk about selenium, This particular antioxidant helps our body to have a lower oxidative stress in your body, and which definitely reduces inflammation, and it enhances immunity. So the good sources of selenium are cottage cheese, you have egg, you have sunflower seeds, you have banana, then you have chicken. These are very good sources. Even fish is a good source of selenium. So these can be taken on a regular basis. Well, there is a lot of buzz and interest in prebiotics and probiotics these days. Let's understand the difference between the two. Prebiotics are substances coming from carbs, some types of carbs, mostly fibers that the humans cannot digest. So the beneficial bacteria in your gut eat this fiber. And the examples of prebiotics would be raw banana, roots and tubers, garlic, onion, oats, barley, wheat bran, you have flax seeds, almonds, you have a couple of berries and apples. So these are your probiotics, and these substances are very, very useful for the bacteria growth in the gut. Again, coming to probiotics. Now, probiotics are live organisms that can be consumed through fermented foods, and or supplements. You have supplements also these days very readily available. And probiotics have often shown to promote the production of natural antibodies in the body. So this in turn helps the body be very well prepared to fight certain infections, including the common cold. And they also boost the immune cells, like what we call as IgA producing cells, or the T lymphocytes, or the natural killer cells. So this is again very important. And we get the regular quota of probiotics in the form of curds. You have buttermilk, you have Greek yogurt, a lot of fermented foods. Again, pickled vegetables, kanjis. Many people these days experiment a lot, and they make kimchi or sauerkraut. This is nothing but pickled or fermented cabbage. You have kefir as a drink. A lot of people these days are brewing kombucha, that is a fermented tea. And these are good sources of probiotics. Well, in the market, Yakult is a very popular product which is available. But I would still prefer that you take anything which is natural, and that can be, absorbed in a much better way. Did you know that one of the first lines of defense against pathogen is your skin? So your skin is like a super soldier made of proteins and fats that form like a water proof barrier. And for that to happen properly, dietary protein is very vital for the new proteins to develop in the cells and create a kind of a protective layer and build the immune. So having a balanced diet is the best bet for a healthy immune system and can give you an edge over any kind of harmful microorganism. So consuming the right combination of macronutrients, like Umapachi said, it is a balance between the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and micronutrients, which means that we don't need them in large quantities, but yet the body, it's extremely important for the body because it needs to support the optimal immune function. And the micronutrients are in the form of vitamins and minerals. Now, ideally, the same also needs to be balanced on the plate. So what you see in front of you is a very colorful plate, which we call as a rainbow plate. The more colors that you add to your plates, you are rest assured of all the micronutrients that are available to you. So the WHO guidelines tell us that one should consume at least 2 to 3 helpings of vegetables, salads, and fruits on the daily basis. There is absolutely no need to buy expensive vegetables and fruits, but go for whatever is locally, seasonally available. Coming to the protein, it's very important to balance protein. as the Indian diet is full of carbs, there are at times, a protein is completely missing in a particular meal, and mostly it is missing in the breakfast. So try to see ways and means of including protein. I don't think I'll go a little more about it because Umapachi has already discussed about this. Again, choose your grains very wisely. So prefer the grains which are minimally polished. So here the grains are basically the refined grains, which is maida or the white bread or anything which is white rice. When rice goes through a whole lot of bleaching, so there are a lot of options available for people to choose between different types like jawar, bajra, ragi, or you have the brown rice or the red rice or the unpolished rice. You have hand pounded rice. So we are spoiled for options if we want to go healthy. So ensure that you are doing all of this in the plate. Many people would ask me that it's so difficult to do this, but believe me, it is very simple. Even if you have a simple one pot meal, like in Bangalore, Bishibele Bhat is very, very popular. So if you have Bishibele Bhat with a whole lot of vegetables added, instead of the rice, the white rice, if you can substitute that with millets and make a cucumber or a mixed vegetable raita, your meal is done. You can similarly make dal khichdi with a lot of vegetables, a curry and a salad. So in this way, it's not mandatory that you have to have all the components, and even if you have a one pot meal, it's easily, you get all the nutrients very easily. Many people also want to know what are the top immune boosting foods. Well, they are all available in our kitchen, whether it is colored vegetables, fruits, berries. You have the greens, then you have your spices like turmeric, ginger, garlic. A lot of people these days are growing simple vegetables in their kitchen garden, and that is something that can be done. It's readily available, and all these things are rich in antioxidants, phytonutrients, flavonoids, and polyphenols. Well, I cannot not tell you a little about post-COVID care because this is the need of the hour. We know that COVID-19 as a pandemic has created a havoc on our body, and we have a lot of symptoms, like you have a lot of fatigue, there is tiredness, there is weakness, there is joint and muscle pain. People have sore throat or cough, very poor appetite, there is reduced sense of taste and smell, and one needs to really plan the strategies very well for rapid recovery. So the food can be very simple, freshly cooked, homemade, less spicy, non-greasy, and very easy to digest. You may want to avoid processed foods. It's very important to be mindful here. Eat slowly, chew your food well to facilitate digestion and prevent acidity, bloating, and flatulence. Avoid heavy legumes like chana, chola, rajma. Simple dals like moong dal will be better tolerated. Again, plenty of hydration. So drink a good amount of warm water throughout the day. You can have healthy fluids in the form of vegetable soups. You can have dal, you can have rasam, you can have fresh buttermilk, you can have sharbats, you can have green tea, or you can, have infused water as well. Many people don't like to drink water, but they don't mind if there is a little lime or a little pudina in the water. So that can be done. Anything which increases the hydration. We all know that there is a little poor appetite in people having COVID. So it makes sense to eat energy dense foods here like dates, dry fruits, dried apricots, raisins, nuts and seeds. Again, simple preparations like khichdi or some porridges like oats or ragi porridge with a little milk, seeds, nuts, and some jaggery added, and that can be a complete meal. Proteins we have already discussed, And here, plant-based proteins, I would say, are better tolerated. Again, lean meats in the form of egg, fish, and poultry is recommended. However, you also should take care of the digestibility quotient and gradually progress towards that. One can make good use of the probiotics, immunity boosters in the form of herbal tea or kadha or kashai that we say. Use spices generously in the form of turmeric, cumin, coriander, ginger, garlic, cloves. Supplements, I leave it to the physician because each person's requirements might be different. So you may want to ask your physician about an accurate supplementation. However, you can definitely enhance the usage of superfoods in the form of flax seeds, sunflower seeds, almonds, walnuts, black raisins, and greens. Well, now that we have seen so much or heard so much about diet, we are talking about immunity, and here immunity cannot be discussed only with diet, and you have to have some kind of exercise. Sitting is the new smoking these days, right? Thanks to the pandemic, the movements have reduced. We are all working from home, longer hours of work on the laptop. So here, simple home-based workouts like you have stretching, spot jogging, or strength and belly workouts. You have a lot of app-based workouts these days, a lot of online classes, skipping the rope, doing yoga. These can be done at least for 30 minutes. The American Heart Association guidelines tell us that one must have about 150 minutes of moderately intense exercise for a week. And this can be easily done. So if we break that down, it just comes to about 30 minutes per day. And these are very doable. Also, you can think of this is one part which is a planned exercise. The other is the spontaneous last minute choices that you're making for yourself. Taking stairs instead of the escalator, small errands around the house, whether it is buying some fruits and vegetables or giving something to the tailor or picking something, that can be done by walking instead of taking the car or the two-wheeler. Again, whenever you are having phone calls, you can take it by walking or religiously think that for every 1 hour of sitting, I'm going to do 10 squats. Challenge yourself. There are a lot of pedometers available. You have Google Fit, which calculates the steps, and a lot of challenges I see. How many steps does one do? And that is a good challenge to take. Keep a little benchmark for yourself. It doesn't really matter what kind of physical fitness you have. And the physical fitness can always be, done in such a way that it is progressible in nature. So if you have done about 20 to 30 minutes, how you can progress it for the next week. So this is something that you cannot deny. And exercise is something that will be a very integral part of building immunity. Well, coming to the stress. Now, due to the pandemic, there is a lot of uncertainty, there is insecurity. People are really pushing their limits to stay in jobs. They are really working very hard. It's pushing you out of the comfortable zone and you're continuously multitasking, and that causes a lot of stress. Now, during extreme stress, our body's immediate response is to release the hormone, which is cortisol. And that is the fight or the flight hormone, which is caused. And that in some amount is very essential for us for the survival needs. But if it is in an extreme amount, then it can have a cascading effect because it triggers the hormone called as ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, and it causes cravings. Many people these days, I find when we take dietary recall, patients tell us that, yes, ma'am, I have, we order from Swiggy in the middle of the night. And what do we order? We order some chocolates, or we order some pastries, or we order for something which is either high fat, high sugar, or high salt foods. So it's very, very important to have some kind of stress bursting techniques. Take a little time out from work, revive your hobbies, maybe play a little music, playing some instrument, or doing some gardening. Any relaxation techniques or pranayam techniques will definitely help. Talking about sleep is one of the powerful lifestyle drug which all of us need for the prevention as well as healing of any disease. When you sleep, when your sleep is not complete, you cannot function optimally, and hence the quality of work reduces, which can spike the stress levels very easily. You get fatigued more faster. The workout gets stressful as your body doesn't get enough rest needed for recovery. You feel very low, you feel impatient, irritated. There is the inability to concentrate, and you might take time to do the simplest of the tasks. So when you're sleep deprived, also you crave for unhealthy foods and indulge in a lot of stress eating, which can sabotage your goals. It could be health goals or it could be nutrition goals. So the recommended sleep is about 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So it's very important that we have some kind of sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is nothing but a variety of different practices and habits that are necessary to have good night sleep quality and full day daytime alertness. So one can, avoid eating heavy meal closer to bedtime because one can feel very acidic because the digestive system is very active. Similarly, avoiding stimulants such as caffeine, alcohol, spicy food closer to bedtime. Again, trying to develop some kind of a discipline, sleeping at the same time every day, and then waking up at the same time. So it you automatically wake up and the body cycle, what we call as a circadian rhythm, is nicely maintained. Now, nowadays, we are not really rushed to go to work, aren't we? So, here what happens is many people take it easy in the night and they binge watch. They sometimes complete the entire web series in the night. So, here it's very, very important to limit your screen time just before going to bed. Gadgets emit light which block the melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, and it hinders your sleep. So make sure that your sleep environment is very pleasant. And there are a lot of yoga asanas, like you have Shavasana, you have Viparit Karani, you have the Yoga Nidra, and these practices are very helpful for people who are having insomnia. So here I would like to wrap up saying that no single food is a superfood. Please don't fall prey to any kind of WhatsApp forwards that claim that consumption or application of certain foods can solely prevent or cure certain respiratory tract infection. Yes, ginger, garlic, turmeric are known to have antiviral properties, but there is absolutely no evidence in their role in solely preventing or treating infections from the respiratory tract viruses. You can definitely use them as antioxidant rich ingredients as a part of your daily cooking, whether it is in the form of a marinade or a tempering, or you can add it to your milk or tea preparations. So I would end by saying that every act of kindness on your part towards yourself is a boost to your immune system. Stay kind, stay healthy, stay immune, and stay safe. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Varshapachi. That was a lot of inputs on a holistic approach to managing our stress and the current times. It's a lot of information out there. And truly, the stress levels tend to suppress our immunity. So, all the ways in which we can handle our sleep, meditation, yoga, exercise management is all very important. Also, the part where the gut and immunity is related. There's a lot of information talking about how our what we eat is truly how our immune function is based on that. So we truly are what we eat. And now, after these presentations, we have a lot of questions that did come in from the Google form that was sent out. Some very interesting questions. So I think we are ready to take them. Okay, so I have a list of questions here, Pachi, which came in. The first question is, Umapachi, a large section of Indian female population is generally found to have low hemoglobin and iron levels. Is this related to diet or is there any other cause?
Varshapachi just covered some of it in detail, saying because of hookworm infection and other worm infections, it can happen. And I would say that in our diet, iron is available in two forms. It is the heme form and non-heme form. So when it is the heme form, the bioavailability is much higher and it gets absorbed very easily because it is in the ferrous form, and that is from animal proteins. But the non-heme form is from plant proteins. It could be from the green leafy vegetables, the pulses, some of the cereals. And when whatever we take at that time, whatever we eat along with the greens, like your chapatis or your ragi, they have certain things like oxalates and phytates which inhibit the absorption of non-heme. So the simple method of improving the bioavailability of non-heme would be to add a little lemon juice on the with the food that we eat, or drink a glass of orange juice. That will help a lot. The other reason is that because of fad diets, we just think that very low carbs. So all the 3 meals we may not be eating sufficient food, and that also causes this iron deficiency. There could be other gynec problems which also could increase the hemoglobin, low hemoglobin levels. These are the things which affect iron.
Thank you, Pachi. The next question is, does overfeeding of infants cause adult obesity, and does that give rise to other morbidities, comorbidities that come up in later life? Varsha Pachi?
Yes, we have seen that these days young mothers, some of them don't trust home-based preparations. So the weaning process is more technical these days. So you have a whole lot of formula feeds, and they are processed foods. So one must remember that. So also the size of the family is shrinking these days. So with a single child, all the pampering happens around the food. So the success is celebrated with food. With both parents working, convenient foods are often stocked. So you have a whole lot of biscuits or some chips or some ice cream or some colas always stocked in the house. So I would recommend people, to go low on the processed foods. Also, it's your responsibility as a parent. You can be ideal role models for your children, because children totally emulate parents when it comes to eating, because you are the first role model. And when I go so far into adult obesity, we see that most of the teenagers these days, there's a lot of rise in childhood obesity, and most of the teenagers are suffering from PCOS or hormonal imbalance, which was not the case earlier. But there is a significant rise in the hormonal imbalance that we see in young adults today.
Correct. In fact, a lot of times it is also said that we tend to, as in, we are emotional eaters, and also what happens is that parents, other adults in the West, and diabetes in the younger crowd. Even blood pressure is seen in teenagers. So yes, it is definitely something that needs to be addressed. The next question is, a lot of youngsters are following various diets, the fad diets, such as FAD, FAD, fad diets. For our listeners, it's not fat, it's fad diets. So a lot of youngsters are following that. And one such example is the keto diet. It's everywhere. And what is your take on such diets, Umapachi? And inputs from Varsha Pachi also.
So keto diet is actually given for patients with epilepsy, and that is under medical supervision. But now it has become a kind of diet for weight loss. And a lot of animal protein is eaten along with low carbs, and it has more fat. So what happens is you're actually creating a load on the kidneys. So in a keto diet, you have to be very careful that there is a particular percentage of carbohydrate also added to the diet. It should not be very heavy, loaded with protein and fat, because especially the protein will cause a overload on the kidneys. Okay. So if we were to say that, what is a balanced keto diet, we can't take, of course, like a blanket statement, but we could say that a modified keto diet could have about 40% carbs and 30% protein and 30% fat. But I think there was a question which covered anything else on keto diet about.
We have about intermittent fasting, and that's the next question, actually. But on keto, I think this is the main. This is the question.
If youngsters are following it without medical advice, you have to remember that there is something called keto fever. They may feel very tired, then they may have bloating. So all these issues should be looked into by a doctor, a physician and a dietitian. It should be done together. Okay.
I would just like to add that keto diets are also not very sustainable. Because you can't really, it's not sustainable for various reasons. One, you get bored. If a person is a vegetarian, then there are very limited options for that person to follow in a keto diet. Second, in a household of 2 or 3, if one person is doing a keto, the other is doing a paleo, it becomes very difficult to maintain that kind for a long time. So I would still advise that keto diets should be done under supervision, like Umapachi said, because your body will slowly start reacting to it in a negative way. And you have to be very, cued to how the body is reacting.
Correct. Yes, Varsha. But also, I think what happens is that when it's not done correctly, a lot of people read information online, and then there is a very sudden depletion of electrolytes. And in fact, some cases where the triglycerides shot up excessively. And people who don't exercise while doing a keto diet, so it tends to be a very badly done. So yes, it has to be done with advice, and because it's a yo-yo pattern, people tend to suddenly lose weight and suddenly gain it all back, so that makes it more detrimental than good. So the next question again today it's a lot being discussed today, which is intermittent fasting. Although fasting is something that we also look for spiritual purposes, but intermittent fasting as it's done by the youth today. Varsha Pachi, there's a lot of buzz around it. So what do you think? Is it advisable?
See, intermittent fasting, one needs to understand that it is not a diet. It is a way of life, and it respects basically 2 cycles of the human body. So every human body goes through an elimination phase where you're detoxifying, you're cleaning, repairing, rejuvenating, rebuilding. And if you're eating in that elimination phase, then it's not really helping you with your weight or with your immunity or any specific health goal that you have. But if you eat in a building phase, the cells act like sponge and they take in all the good nutrition that you are giving. Having said that, people also ask me, what are the good fasting periods and what are the good window periods, whether it is 14, 16 or 20. Well, that does not matter. The good way of beginning intermittent fasting is to, try to have an early dinner and try to create a good gap of about 10 to 12 hours between the last and the first meal. See how your body reacts. train your body to be in that state for some time, and then slowly try to push the limits to maybe 14 and 16. But it's not mandatory. And there is a disclaimer, not everybody can do intermittent fasting. There are people with diabetes on insulin, and if they have to do intermittent fasting, they may have to go back to the physician for two reasons. One is the dosage of the insulin may be altered, and whether that is recommended for them. So it's not meant for everyone. However, this pattern of keeping a 10 to 12 hours of basic intermittent fasting can be done on an absolute sustained basis, and a lot of good comes out of it. So something which can be practiced as a way of life, I would say.
Right. So fasting does have its benefits, but when done erratically for the purpose of weight loss, I think it gets a little too draining for people who might be already dealing with stress, leaving out a lot of important food groups and minerals and vitamins. So I think it has to be planned and done, if at all.
Yeah.
And would you say that portion control versus intermittent fasting is what one needs to look at?
Again, portion control and intermittent fasting are two totally different concepts. Portion control, and instead of portion control, I wouldn't say portion control is something which can be done for a very long time. Till you come to your or reach your goals, portion size control is needed. Maybe in terms of high fat, high calorie foods. But mindful eating would be definitely a better way of looking at food and at your plate. Intermittent fasting, like I said, is not a diet, it's just a way of life. Portion size control is done to attain some goals. Say, for example, if a person has high lipid levels, then and a person is eating a lot of non-veg, then you might need to cut down on the portion size or cut down on the frequency and the amount. Once the goal is attained, then how do you want to take it forward? So all this needs to be reviewed periodically.
Thank you. The next question was about milk intake and calcium. So there's a lot of debate on that. So despite milk being a rich source of calcium and even protein, it is found that a lot is written about how calcium leaching from bones happens because of milk intake and milk products. So maybe Umapachi, if you can throw some light on this. And the occurrence of lactose intolerance and gluten allergy has also come up recently. So inputs from Varsha Pachi also as well about how we can look at this aspect.
Actually, drinking milk and then losing calcium or leaching of calcium, we have not heard much about it. Whether it is due to some medical condition that it has happened, we are not sure. But we definitely know that excess salt, if you eat, the sodium that we get from the preserved foods, packaged foods, that can cause this condition. So I don't know about this drinking milk and taking. Another thing is, if it's very rich in animal protein, then the blood gets acidic, and then you have this leaching of calcium. But it's a very small percentage. So we can continue to drink milk, I think, because it is rich in so many other nutrients. We get phosphorus, we get potassium, we get the protein, and it's an easy source of like a balanced diet, complete protein. It's an easy source of complete protein. That's what I would like to say.
When coming to lactose intolerance, actually what happens is as we are growing up, the enzyme lactase is slowly diminishing. So high amount of milk may not be tolerable, and people have a lot of flatulence, bloating with dairy products. But people can have it in the lactic acid form, like in the form of curds or buttermilk or homemade chenna, and these are definitely better. I saw that the question also said that there was lactose intolerance and it's on a high. Yes, it is on a high also because the quality of milk is also deteriorated over the years, right? We often hear that because of the high demand of dairy products, a lot of malpractices are happening. The cows are injected with hormones, so we really don't know what the product is, what is coming to the table. So, having said that, to have it in the lactic acid form makes more sense than just unnecessarily drinking it. Many people think that if you have 2 or 3 glasses of milk per day, you finish or you tick mark your protein. But instead of relying solely on dairy products, we have the plant based products as well, which are equally good. And they, since we always as Indians have a cereal pulse combination, that becomes a complete protein with the absolute Pedica score of 1, which is comparable, which is of high biological value as comparable to the animal protein. So I would still bet on plant-based proteins over the dairy products for people who are having lactose intolerance. Again, in terms of gluten, what we have observed is many people who have been eating chapatis right from the childhood are suddenly now becoming gluten intolerant. And if we, go back to the reasons, one of the reasons what we find is many people were making atta which they were milling at home. They would buy the wheat, clean it, and get the atta milled, and then they would add some chana or they would add some soy and make a multigrain atta. Whereas now we are buying ready-made atta, whether it is a multigrain atta or otherwise. So here, if you have, when you have seen the claims that happen on the TV that, the chapati remains soft for 10 hours and 12 hours is because of the gluten. Gluten is nothing but the protein which is present in wheat and wheat products. And that tends to, if you have increased this quantity of gluten in a product to enhance some quality, then that causes a rise in intolerance. But it makes sense to get it evaluated. Elimination is a better way of judging. So if you have eliminated that product for some time, then you can pinpoint it to gluten intolerance. Otherwise, it's again, people think that the minute you stop eating gluten, you will lose weight. Well, there is no connection there. So yes, for people who have gluten intolerance, then there are alternatives to that. Then you can have oats, so you can have rice-based products, so you can have barley. These are better products to combat with it.
Right. I think moderation is the key. And besides that, also not overdoing something, as in if milk, I think a pre-digested like a curd or a tak would be a more tolerable option. And elimination is a good way to know whether gluten is okay for us or not, wheat consumption. We have a couple of questions more. One is Kumapachi has addressed this in her presentation, but in Amchi cuisine, if there is a good way in which we could balance our meals, or any recipes or preparations for weight loss or diabetes for Amchi cuisine.
I would say there is actually no single regime for weight loss because it has to be individualized. But with respect to Konkani cuisine, what one could do is, like suppose you say that coconut increases weight and coconut is not good for heart diseases. The amount of that ambat or bendi that you make, they reduce the quantity that you make. No, you make it only for one meal. And what is it that goes into an ambat? We have the methi, which is slightly roasted and blended with the coconut. It is actually a small form of, it has omega-3. So any of the cuisines, if you find the Indian cuisines, it is actually very well balanced. It is just that we are overeating, or we are, if we had only stuck to eating a meal in the afternoon and then at night, maybe that wouldn't have caused any problem. But now the availability of all the foods outside is causing a bigger problem, if you ask me. So in the Konkani cuisine, this is one thing. Second thing is we add kokum to amgala, any of the fish curries or the bindis. And now kokum is going as one of the, in a capsule form, as a weight reducing or a meal replacement. It goes into a capsule or food. So see, actually, if you just think of the original ingredients, all that we need to is balance it properly and use red rice. If you feel that you're going to eat more portions of rice, eat red rice or your lapsi, or bring in one of the millets like quinoa, so that your, or automatically the satiety value is reached. You know, you feel full, so you won't be going for the second and third helping of rice. So I think these are the, pointers. Anek Malari, add more vegetables. Add more vegetables to the diet in the amchi meal. Ami chad upkari koriyada. Ani there is a saying ne, the upkari lunch shewan घेताती आणि lunch upkari shewan घेताती. So I think our mindful thinking comes into the picture.
Correct, Umapachi, very valid points there. In fact, I think it is often noticed that when, if we consume the whole rice or a brown rice, red rice, compared to just the white rice, I think we tend to eat a little lesser of that. It does make us feel a little full faster. And I think going back to even Varsha Pachi's slide where you showed that portion sizes on plate. So even we can look at our meal and assess whether are we including enough of vegetable and protein sources, or is it just a carbohydrate. So each meal will also tell us visually that are we on the right track in balance. I think that's a good point there. So I think even coconut is supposed to be, it's blacklisted sometimes as the bad guy, but also we understand that, a lot is written about how it increases cholesterol and blood pressure. So does it really do all that? That was one of the questions. So is it bad? Umapachi?
Okay, so, I would say that, see, coconut has a lot of saturated fat and it also has a lot of calories. If you see 100 grams coconut, it's almost like 400 calories. Even ragi, rice, it's around 350 calories. So, and we are so tempted by the coconut based gravies. Of course, Amgal cooking uncle zata amita vattun ghaltati, and we are not using just coconut milk. So we can say we are providing fiber, but we'll definitely tend to eat more portions of the cereal that go along with the coconut. So if that way it can cause obesity in some, and that could lead to higher lipid profile. So it's like you can't have a blanket statement, but you can also use these pointers. Suppose you are exercising regularly, walking miles, nothing happens to them, because we get patients from the coastal regions who are eating coconut every day and none of their profile, lipid profile is high. No triglycerides, no LDL, very good HDL. Then when you ask them, they're walking like miles, not what we do, just going to the gym for a little while. And so exercise, diet, exercise, and eating in moderation is what counts here.
Correct. In fact, it's a very nutritive source, a lot of vitamins, anti-inflammatory properties. But I think to make room for coconut, we can in fact skip out on the other things that we overdo. I think all the mid eating, the processed food, the deliveries, small little bites. I think that is what, and where the activity comes in, I think it balances out the calories from coconut. But definitely, it need not be excluded for sure.
Also, it can be wherever you can minimize it. So, like Umapachi said, can be used in moderation. So, wherever you don't need it and you're just using it for garnishing, for our po or for our upkaris, we can definitely reduce the quantity. So, wherever it goes in for cooking, that's fine. But whenever you're just adding it to enhance the flavor, that can be reduced.
Correct. And there was one question on how a 58-year-old, I find it difficult to lose weight, although making dietary modifications. Any suggestions for weight loss? there could be other aspects. Maybe this is the last question considering our time.
So here I would say that one must understand that all foods have a certain number of calories or a certain number of energy for a specific amount of volume of food. And this concept is called as energy density. So you have the high density foods and which provide a lot of calories for a very small amount of volume of food. So it could be nuts, butters, cookies, whereas when you say a product has low density foods, which means that it's providing pure calories per portion of food, which could be a bowl of soup or a bowl of salad or a glass of thin buttermilk. So if you have to compare, now if you have to compare 1 cup of say raw spinach, which takes about just about 7 calories, and compare that with 1 cup of premium ice cream, which is 500 calories, they both have the same amount of volume of food, but they are very different in terms of calories. So here, the concept of volumetrics is to add water, add fiber, add fruits and vegetables to the diet, so that then you can have a good amount of food and with fewer calories, and also enjoy a satisfying portion of food. Ultimately, we need to feel full. You cannot go to bed on a empty stomach. So you have to feel full, and that all these things, what you do for increasing the volume, increase the satiety. So then you don't have cravings. You're much settled. And even if somebody is just offering you a piece of chocolate or a piece of mithai, you can easily, not have it. So in this way, I think, Pachi, if you think that you're having a very sedentary lifestyle and you're having issues, and that is not allowing you to exercise, you should be in fact more concerned about what kind of calories are going in. You don't need that many calories too.
Correct. So I think there's a lot more input as to why certain people don't see their weight loss, and it in fact would be a more detailed, it requires more looking into for a diet. Correct. So in fact, there were a couple of more questions which were pertaining to some health issues also, which came from our viewers. Only thing that it is a topic that takes so much of nutrition is something that we can just go on, and all the kind of interesting questions that come in, the queries that people have. But I think we have come to the close of our session, because I think we've come to our time slot, and we've got more questions. But what we could maybe ask our viewers to do is, if there's anything that needs to be answered, if they can maybe send an email at scmsayujam@gmail.com if anyone needs to be reached out to, so we could look into that. And so I would like to end with a vote of thanks. So first and foremost, our beloved Param Pujya Swamiji, for all the love and blessings due to which these programs, these sessions go on so smoothly. So pranams to Swamiji. Then our Sayujam team, which has been endlessly, tirelessly, they've been working at putting so many of these sessions and keeping us really busy. It's a very very fruitful and a very feel good. You feel really good to look into all these sessions. So I think that's so much to be thankful for to them, and definitely the back-end team providing us all the technical support with all the challenges, putting up our slides and things. So big thank you to them, and definitely our viewers and our audience for a patient listening, hearing, and all the encouragement. Your inputs would be welcome. So with this, we end the session. Thank you to all our speakers, and thank you, Varsha Pachi, Uma Pachi, for this time and for concising such important information, because I think the biggest challenge that there is so much out there, so many questions and doubts people have, but to find a right message to such a wide audience with all kinds of ailments or a large age group, I think you've done a commendable job, Pachi, both of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinaya. You've been really instrumental in collating all the data as well. Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you, Vinaya.
Thank you all of you. Thank you, ma'am. We'll end with the Sabha Samapti Prarthana. Nandantu sadhaka sarve vinashyantu vidushakaah avastha shambhavi mestu prasannostu guru sada sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayah sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkham apnuyat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.